Welcome, everyone, to Talking Back to Suicide. This is one of your hosts, Dr. Diane Kaufman, although I like to be called Dr. Diana for my creative self. I'm a poet, artist, humanism and medicine awardee, a retired adult and child psychiatrist, and the founder director of the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention that uses the power of art to educate, connect, express, and heal. And our special guest today on Talking Back to Suicide is Jen Cheng, storyteller, poet, writer, musician, improviser, and artist, honored as the 5th West Hollywood City Poet Laureate and author of Braided Spaces. She's a Poet Laureate Fellow with the American Academy, I'm going to say that again, with the Academy of American Poets, a California Arts Council Fellow, and a 2026 Mancondista, a multidisciplinary artist blending East-West influences as Feng Shui poetry. In 2025, Cheng was named one of the top 50 plus impact leaders by LA Magazine. Her writing is published in Passenger's Journal, Colossus Current, Altadena Poetry Review, and elsewhere. As a teaching artist, she has offered her unique writing insights and inspiration at UCLA Extension and other national organizations. Warm welcome, Jen. We're delighted that you could join us today.
Thank you.
I want to introduce our co-host, Kino Isaac, who is coming to us from South Africa. Kino is, very importantly, a mental health advocate for independent artists. He's a DJ, a music producer, and music entrepreneur, and great asker of questions and developing conversations. So back to you, Jen. Tell us how poetry started to seed and germinate in your life.
I'm so honored and thankful to have this forum with you. A lot of us scribble notes and poetry in our diaries and journals, or for me, it was scraps of paper. I was always an environmentalist, so I would scribble notes on the back of a receipt. And I thank my English teachers in my elementary school days to expose me to poetry, because my parents were not particularly literary people. My mom did drop us off at the library, and I was completely a bookworm. And so thanks to librarians and English teacher for exposing me to poetry. And then in my family, we didn't get to talk about our feelings. So a lot of my frustration would go down in words that I write to myself privately. I didn't have privacy in my Chinese American family. I had 4 younger siblings who always got into my stuff, and my parents didn't have boundaries about respecting a diary. So I ended up writing little bits of words, poetry, feelings on the backs of paper where people might not be snooping. So poetry is a private thing for me as well as a public thing. Now that I am a poet laureate, I am out and about as a teaching artist, offering tools to help with wellness. I come from a wellness background. I've been teaching meditation. I often include some of those breathing exercises into the beginning of a writing class, just to center and ground everyone as they scramble into a class here in LA.
Jen, could you say something about, from your experience and maybe the experience of the work that you do and friendships that you have, about mental health these days?
I say that poetry is a snack. Some of us have lost attention span with the influx of social media and just technology demanding us answering a text or email quickly. So I think when we sit down for a poetry writing class, it's an option that's accessible to a lot more people than, say, reading an entire novel. I know a lot of people are multitasking, so they're stressed. Poems can be short as half a page, 4 lines. And in that little line, sometimes we feel, okay, I'm not so alone. Somebody else has felt this before. Somebody else's dog has died. and they're expressing their grief even if I don't have the words for it. I have a social media friend, which ironically I'm saying how social media has shortened our attention span, but it's also allowed us to connect with people who are geographically far. He is an illustrator, and I praised him for expressing something in a visual art form, and he didn't have words to put on it. And I gave words to what I saw of his visual art. And he was so thankful for my words that he didn't have. You know, some of us have, you know, more visual arts intelligence, others have musical intelligence, others have verbal intelligence, and my offering with the verbal exercises, the words exercises, helps others who might not have a grasp on it. So empathy, connection, not feeling as alone, that's where poetry can really be helpful.
In your workshops that you do, and maybe you can tell us even more about those specific workshops during our time together, but are there specific areas that people are most struggling with, or the topics of their poems? What are your thoughts?
I think a lot of people have frustration, right? Frustration is unexpressed anger. And I teach the 5 elements from Feng Shui. Most people know Feng Shui as an interior design concept. And I tell people, some of us don't have the option of reorganizing our doorways and windows. And your body is your temple, your mindset is your home. So if you can learn to rearrange the mental chaos sometimes that needs to be put in some kind of direction, then that helps you handle the stress, handle the frustration, handle the, I don't know what to say. So most of writing is editing. And when I share a poem with you, please know that it did not come out in the first draft looking that way. Sometimes you just free write for 3 minutes. If any of you have done the artist's way, free writing is where you do your best to not judge yourself. Just empty out your feelings, your grocery list, your to-do list, your busy monkey mind. And from there, you can circle or underline, highlight the phrases that you want to play with. And that becomes your little Lego box. And you can build something and craft it into something that feels more artistic or capsulated.
As you were speaking about the artist, where I was thinking, what, by maybe Julia Cameron and the morning pages, right? Where you, for a certain amount of time, you just put pen to paper and just write.
Yeah, giving yourself permission to have feelings, which is something I did not grow up with as a child. So give yourself permission to express. And even if it sounds dumb or nonsensical, it's okay. And sometimes poetry can be surreal. It could be dreamlike. So just dump it on the page and then craft it into something that might look like something you want to share publicly, right? There's the private writing and then there's the public writing.
Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, so in Feng Shui, there's the 5 elements. And the first one I want to cover is fire. As an Asian American, I've grown up dealing with racism, sexism, stereotypes that made me so angry. I was bullied at school and I didn't have words to come back against the bullies. And you know, those kinds of frustrations, you don't want to keep it inside because that eats away at your nervous system and all of that. So when I meditated on the element fire, it's passion, you know, it's potentially anger, it's potentially illuminating. It could be phoenix rising and burning down to ashes and recreating yourself once again. And the area that it has to do with is owning your fame, owning your pride. And so for that, I want to share the poem, Tell Me About Dragons. It is what we call a concrete poem. I promise you the first draft did not look like this. It was just a free write, and then I crafted it into a shape that is looking like my non-trained visual art of what a dragon head and a neck looks like. Little antlers, antennas going backwards, the eye and the mouth. And I shaped the words and edited it based on what I thought a dragon might look like. So I don't know if Kino, you can share the whole shape because right now I only see half a page. If you could scroll up and get rid of some of the white. Yeah, get rid of some of the white space. I want it to be large enough that people who have trouble hearing can see it better. Yeah. Can you make it slightly larger to get rid of the
Okay,
white
that
space
will be
margin?
difficult. What I'm going to do is
Yeah, just scroll up.
you start and I'll scroll as you. Yeah,
Okay, here's the fire poem I wrote.
there you go.
It's called Tell Me About Dragons. As it happens, I have never tired of dragons, the myths, our fears, our fascinations. Restaurants with dragons in the logo, we know that's where you can reliably get good food. We are all influenced, whether or not you've watched the movie The Way of the Dragon. So I'll breathe into the fire and not worry that they try to insult me with labels of Dragon Lady, meant to box me in. I take the flight, the mystery, the powerful red hues to paint and write new scrolls and talk story. I'm combating the stereotype that as an Asian American, when I speak up, as a Chinese American, when I speak up, people can be oppressing me to not speak up. And that I am owning the stereotype and the insulting term of dragon lady to say, go ahead. I will be Dragon Lady if that's what it takes to speak up.
Jen, could you read the poem again? Sometimes it's great to hear it more than once.
Okay. You don't need to show
Okay.
the text keynote. It's okay to just let it focus on me reading.
Okay.
Tell me about dragons. As it happens, I have never tired of dragons. The myths, our fears, our fascinations, restaurants with dragons in the logo, we know that's where you can reliably get good food. We are all influenced, whether or not you've watched the movie The Way of the Dragon. So I'll breathe into the fire and not worry that they try to insult me with labels of Dragon Lady, meant to box me in. I take the flight, the mystery, the powerful red hues to paint and write new scrolls and talk story.
Powerful. When did you write that poem? And was there an immediate context of your writing it, or had you been writing this poem inside you for years?
You know, I can't know when I've been writing inside me. Sometimes when I write a poem, this one in particular, I do research. I wanted to mention Bruce Lee without saying Bruce Lee. So I'm not a cinephile where I can name the film titles off the top of my head. So I had to go look on the internet to say, okay, which of Bruce Lee's films has the word dragon in it, or perhaps an image of dragon. Also, that I discovered that dragons are in so many cultures. Apparently, those who are into Dungeons and Dragons told me at a museum, oh, I love dragons, write me a dragon poem. And it was after I had already written mine. And they told me, oh, there's a Celtic kind of dragon. There's dragons in Alaska folklore. So I think dragons are universally a powerful kind of animal amongst so many cultures. I wanted to start my poetry book with fire and imagery that anyone, whatever culture you come from, can relate to, whether you're into anime or role-playing Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's a great way to say, tap into your power, tap into your passion, and stand up for yourself. It's okay.
I had an image as you were reciting your poem of it being printed on silk as a banner waving in the wind.
Yeah, I mean, all those movies with tribes and castles and villages that have banners signifying their protective guardian animals. That's wonderful. I love that imagery.
Jen, when you perhaps share that poem in your workshops, are there writing prompts that you're suggesting, or are you having people get inspired by the poem itself, or certain phrases or images? How do you work with it, and how do you encourage others to work with it as well?
Now it sounds like we're tapping into teaching a class right now.
That's okay.
We'll hold back on that. What I offer is I want people to meditate on the element fire.
Okay.
Is there anything passionate, frustration, things that you want to be proud of, or you already are proud of that you want to write about? So no, you're not prompted to write a dragon poem. You're prompted to write something that's burning inside of you that needs to get out. And you don't actually have to use the word fire. right? That you can play a game of taboo, use all the words affiliated with fire. Perhaps it's not rising fire, perhaps it's a smaller fire, or it's putting out a fire, right? That maybe you were previously passionate about something and that musical band has now disbanded, and you can reminisce about the passion from before. So whatever the fire element brings out in you today, in this moment, might be different than what it brings out tomorrow. So meditating on passion and fame, what does that mean to you? So I have quite a number of poems in each element, and they talk about different topics.
And were you saying passion and fame or passion and flame?
Well, fame as in like, what are you willing to be public about? What are you willing to be proud of? And this dragon poem for me is a reclamation of insults, right? So I'm burning down the insult and reclaiming it as something I'm proud of.
As an antidote to shame.
Yeah, for sure. Having that heavy baggage of shame, let it go. Like, we don't need to have that. And I think that's where poetry and meditation can be so helpful to processing that, so it's not undigested shame, right? That we can process insults and shame into something that we can let go and be proud of.
What are your thoughts?
On the poem or just
In
overall?
general.
Well, this is definitely a new way to look at poetry. I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm writing notes and I'm just connecting the dots on how you actually came about all of this. Like something new, something fresh. I should rather ask you, Diana, as a poet yourself, like what do you think about, how Jen goes about her poetry and, so many different components.
I just feel connected with the experience of the poetry that you're sharing, right? And that it's taking it off the page and into our lives, and are giving it life as well, right? Could you share some other poems?
Yeah.
And the other elements?
Yes, I have 4 more elements to
Yeah.
go through. The next one is the earth element. It's about being grounded in self-care, and it's a lot of my poetry ends up being defiance, because I've survived a suicidal mom during my childhood. I've had to learn to take up space when other people have taken up too much space. And so this is a self-care poem that is actually inspired by the visual artwork of Ceci n'est pas une pipe. So it's the shape of a pipe. That's a visual painting at the LA County Museum of Art here. And it's surreal, right? That, are you looking at a pipe or are you looking at a poem? Are you looking at not a poem and not a pipe? So in my self-care, this one is written from a character point of view. Sometimes when you're stuck in a situation, it's too personal. And how do I defend myself in a place from a stronger archetype? So I'm writing this from the point of view of a badass French feminist who doesn't care, who smokes cigars and cigarettes, which I don't do any of that, who drinks, I don't drink, but she's just like, I'm hanging out with the best of Hemingway. And so I'm writing it from her point of view to give voice to an awkward situation. And with that, I'm going to give her the French accent. So if you don't quite understand me because of the accent, I'll read it again if you need without the accent, but perhaps you'll enjoy the accent. It's fun. Ceci n'est pas un poème. Hemingway with the paper is an image of an author. That was a reason to choose mojitos as my masculine drink, so that a femme at a bar among straight men could get respect. The mental treachery a female makes daily to get a crack at a game among lawyers. So the boys on their turf learn the debate strategies to smoke them defenseless with wits. So don't pin a girl to one row of the femme fatale as a tragedy that only sexualized power could be a raison d'etre. To be heroes with eyes closed, pure to basic instinct with a parfum de je ne sais quoi.
I love that, taking another point of view, right? Becoming the other character or other characters is so liberating.
Yeah, if you feel trapped in your social space or the situation, can you call upon mythical goddesses, animal guardians, or here is just like, can I imagine this powerful feminist in Paris in the salons and hanging out with the intellectuals and, you know, not caring what they say to her because she just don't care.
Have you shared, or had you wanted to share your poetry with your family? Because I asked because you mentioned how that communication wasn't necessarily a strong point. What were your thoughts about being a poet in your family and then sharing that part of yourself, if it were safe to do so?
So at this point in my adult life, I have been through plenty of therapy, so many different modalities since my early 20s. And with therapy, I have learned that communication and being heard requires the exchange of at least two people, and that the other person in the room, Diana, you're an excellent listener. You reflect, you absorb, you interact with me well, and not everyone has done the work. And a lot of us survivor children of families who were not supportive, we were not heard, we were not listened to. My poetry is available on the internet, so if anyone wants to find my poetry, certainly people can read it, but I will not ask people who have had a history of not listening to read my poetry. So that's a very blunt and honest reflection on what I've learned in therapy. The relationship requires listening on both sides. And if I want to be heard, I don't go to the same people who did not hear me in the first place.
Yes. This morning I was writing some questions for a future panel that I'm going to be on about mental health and expressive arts. And the first question or comment that I was writing was about building, to reach out for help, one needs to have experiences. I didn't use the phrase with being heard, but with safety. Is it safe to reach out for help? Right? And in certain situations through trauma, right, or families where that was not supported, or there was judgment and blame and anger, one learned that it wasn't safe to communicate, and let alone to reach out for help. And then I made a comment about that, what can parents do to help build trust and safety in their children? And although I participated and also facilitated, poetry workshops, listening to you was, I think, really the first time I thought of it that way, in terms of that there's the experience of trust and safety in sharing and communicated and being listened to. And that can be a scaffolding. It's important of itself, and can also scaffold perhaps into one day if somebody needs to reach out for help for various things, but we're talking especially about mental health, that they've had experiences of not only the experience of the other being safe, but also building our own courage and being able to share.
And the courage requires positive reinforcement.
Yes.
And friends of friends are sometimes better listeners than your direct friend. Or, your therapist might teach you how it feels to be heard and understood. And I say that I have had so much kindness from strangers. Just the simple act of giving and receiving a compliment at a grocery store was a huge exercise for me, because I grew up not getting compliments from the parents. And those small things add up. It really adds up. And I had one therapist say, when your partner, your parent, whoever the close people are, say something hurtful, and it's kind of small and you don't want to say anything because you're a people pleaser, you want to keep the peace. It feels like a paper cut. And even though the paper cut is small, my God, sometimes it hurts so bad. And you're like, that was a snide, disrespectful comment. Don't put down my efforts. If you don't like my poem, that's okay. I don't need you to compliment on it, but don't put down my poem, right? So I think if we just encourage each other to look for kindness and give kindness, then we can learn to receive compliments from each other better. And that helps build up our shore of confidence and courage.
Yeah, it's a paradox that we're called, I'm not sure, the original people who created language over time, but we're supposed to be humankind. And often that's not the case.
Well, with that, I want to share a poem about a mentor, and I'm not going to share the whole piece. It's just the first section. I say that my piano teachers saved my childhood because they really nurtured me. The school teachers I only got for 9 months of the year, and then, I'd have to move on to the next school teacher. And so there was not that continuity through my growing up, but piano was there for me. I was naturally good at it. Like any other kid, I wanted to quit a whole bunch of times because it's such a solitary, introverted task of trying to learn a piece. And the joke is you suck until you don't suck. And so that beginner's learning curve is just discouraging, and you just have to keep at it and have faith that you're going to get better at it. And I want to dedicate this part 1, Mentors with the Letter M, to my piano teacher who was far older than me, and I'm sure she's out there as an angel spirit. And it's called Mentors with the Letter M, and it's representing the metal element. The metal element is the area of helpful people. It's also the area of beauty, precision, and efficiency. So the way she taught me piano and how to be with my body was the first teacher I ever had, was her teaching me how to move my hands. Mentors with the Letter M, part 1. Mina showed me how to play music emotionally with her passionate but out of tune humming that moaned as she coaxed the music from her other grand piano and commanded me to copy what I had just heard. She was the first to teach me how to use my body, how to be physical with another person intimately, as she taught me to wrap my little fingers to dance on top of her wrinkled hands to imitate how she played. She ruined me for the light keys of the easier-to-play Yamahas and got me to love the thick sounds of the complex Bolsendorfers and the Steinways. Decades later, I feel that heavy hammer action now when I use a typewriter. Light touch keys get jammed with my strong and fast piano fingers. She stopped me from straining my hands too small to sustain repeated stretched octaves by introducing me to the Alexander technique to breathe better and relax between every effort. She affectionately sprinkled Yiddish words into her praise, smother my stiff, awkward Chinese body into her passionate Russian Jew hugs, pushing my too short head into her ample bosom, and transferred more love with rugula and baklava she put out at recitals. My studies were interrupted too early by my mother's whims, and I couldn't find a way to sneak out to my beloved teacher. It's too late now to find her. My best homage to her is to learn the piece she wanted me to conquer, the piano concerto known as the Rock 3.
Yes, the importance of loving people in our lives.
Yeah. Teachers. Thank you to all the teachers who spend extra time. Kino, you can stop sharing the screen. That's part 2 of Different Mentor. Yeah. Helpful people. They could be your neighbor. They could be a fellow dog walker. They could be the receptionist at a doctor's office. That kindness and the extra attention and affection they give you. Cherish that and try to transfer that to somebody else who might need it. You never know who needs it.
Attention giving, right, to notice, right, and to notice almost in the smallest way that we're seen.
Yeah.
We can feel it. It's so interesting in this what technologically connected age, how disconnected people feel.
That loneliness is a big deal. Loneliness. I don't think we really recovered from the COVID shutdown of 2020. I think people's social skills are just not there. I really advocate that whatever small compliment you can just give a stranger once a day, it would be so good to uplift each other.
And the other day, I saw a man, it could have been a woman, right? In this particular situation, it was a man. He was pushing the baby stroller. His baby is in the stroller, right?
Yeah.
And his head was down and he was looking at his cell phone as he was pushing the baby stroller. And I just thought, oh no, what a difference it would make if you were not involved in your cell phone, right?
Yeah, that children
struck me. What do you think?
That children love to listen to music, and they love it when their caregivers sing to them. Even if you're not the best singer, it's just a joyful connection, because music, we don't even need the words. I mean, that's where music transcends poetry, because if you don't understand the language, the music can just be a vibe. You're a musician. Be a vibe of the music.
Yeah. Another poem to share in your Feng Shui?
Yeah. So while we're talking about mental health on this podcast, I pulled out the ones that were more mental health related. And the next one is water. The element of water can be associated with the depths, like the gods that are in the water, like Poseidon, the mermaids. It could be, migration. I am a child of immigrants, and I did not get to know my paternal grandparents. So I don't know where they're floating around, but somehow they found me to talk to me. They've talked to me a few times. So for those of you who meditate or listen to tarot cards or get readings somehow, want to encourage you to be open, because sometimes I feel very skeptical about the messages, and then you get the skin tingles, and the skin tingles go, okay, that's truth. Yeah, because I didn't know some of my ancestors. So the migration, the water element, is often in the area of career. And career is really about, building things up. It's not just one job, right? It's like one job leads to a network that leads to the next thing that leads to the next thing. So it's like building upon. And there's a quote by Audre Lorde that is called "Poetry is not a luxury." And I was inspired by that and called this next poem, Kino, if you could pull it up. Compliments are not a luxury. Compliments are not a luxury. I was not allowed to receive compliments as a child. When someone said I was cute, my mother would respond humbly, "Nah, the rice bag is prettier than my daughter." When someone said I was talented, my mother would downplay my piano skills even though I was winning awards. "Nah, so-and-so's daughter is so much better." When my chemistry teacher gave me an A+, I was proud to tell my father, who didn't respond. So I repeated myself louder. He barely looked up from his newspaper and said, "So what?" When I got a full-ride scholarship for a summer academy, my mother said, "Who's going to take care of the kids?" When I got a job after college with health insurance, I got myself a therapist, a white Jewish older woman who took the role of a supportive white parent, who tried to teach me to take a compliment and practice to simply say, "Thank you." I told her it felt false. I had trouble believing compliments were real. She said, "If you can't do it for yourself, do it for their sake. You're rejecting someone trying to give you a compliment." I give compliments to other people easily because I appreciate them. So, okay, I will practice saying thank you until one day it might feel real. I'm happy to give a compliment to the grocery bagger when he does a good game of Tetris with my vegetables, or the tomboy with a mohawk about her fresh shave. It's been decades since that first therapist, and I still have some trouble believing and receiving compliments. It wasn't until recently that I heard a Chinese elder say to me, "I'm proud of you." Speaking through an Aussie psychic, my paternal grandfather, deceased before I was born, sent me love. I felt with my tears. Compliments are not a luxury.
How does it feel, Jen, to read your own words aloud?
I have read this poem before, but I don't share this one often because as a survivor of domestic violence and a survivor of a mom who went through many years of postpartum depression and suicidal ideation and disappearing, I don't want people to feel sorry for me, right? That those who did not experience my parents, they're like, oh my God, how awful. Your parents didn't compliment you. I was like, yeah, it was pretty awful. But thank goodness I had my piano teachers, my other teachers, strangers who were kind to me, my therapists. And for those of you who sometimes have low self-esteem, which, you know, if you survive a lot, we struggle with self-esteem and you hang on to every compliment. You build yourself up. You got to believe in yourself so that other people can believe in you. And also remember that other people have believed in you. And if they want to speak to me from the spiritual side, from the animals, from the trees, from elsewhere, sure, I'll listen. I'm learning to say thank you. Thank you, Grandpa.
And Jen, Kino and I want to thank you. You know, Kino in his emails ends his email with, I appreciate you. Beautiful. I've read so many emails from Kino, and I'm always struck in such an in-depth way to read that last line. I appreciate you, exclamation point. We don't
It's
hear
my
that enough.
signature to anyone. You know, anyone I send an email to, that's how I ended. Appreciate you.
Yes, yes. Although I want to say, I don't think, I'm going to ask you this. Would you send your mortal enemy, right, an email that ended with, I appreciate you? I don't think so. I hope not.
Well, I think in some spiritual perspectives, we thank our enemies because they teach us something.
Well,
right?
that's true. Yes. Yes, you're right. The reframe is correct.
Want to, but the larger, higher self is like, okay, you taught me something.
That's like Rumi's poem, The Guest House, right? That each emotion is helping us in some way.
And that's where we use the 5 elements. If the emotion is too difficult to feel head on or in it, you can use the outside archetype goddess to give you a perspective, some protection, or you can have another character point of view. I did get to know my maternal grandma. She was sweet with me. She was kind to me, but she was quite manipulative and caused a lot of mental health drama amongst her children. So for those of you who know the Netflix series Bridgerton, there's a narrator known as Lady Whistledown who relishes in giving the gossip, and the Queen Charlotte herself, wants to hear the gossip because the gossip is the drama of the village, the city, the town. And if you are a gossip lover, it actually can teach you about human behavior, even if it's not flattering. Even if it's not in your favor, right? That even your enemy can teach you something about yourself. So Kino, will you pull up this poem? It's an abecedarian. Abecedarian poems use all of the alphabet letters from A through Z. And as I am highlighting a eulogy for Grandma, I started the alphabet at G and ending in F. And I am quite proud of finding the troublesome words for X and Z. So an abecedarian is a poetic form that you can look up on various websites like poets.org, the Academy of American Poets, or Poetry Foundation, and they can explain it. And so basically the first letter on the left-hand side is the alphabet. And I also made this a character poem like the French lady. This is the Gossip Queen, and this is my version of Lady Whistledown's British accent. Bridgerton's narrator spills the tea about my grandma. Dearly departed with a grand hurrah, hailing respect instead of grief. In turn, her memorial party was her dream birthday celebration, as she just died gracefully of heart failure in her sleep. Kind of a quiet exit, but so obvious as her last symphony. Manipulation was her modus operandi, so none of her surviving 7 children could say no to showing up. Over all the years of plots she orchestrated to stoke personality struggles with believable lies. As the drama queen and mother mastermind of recurring rivalries between siblings, you needed the latest headlines to know who was mad at whom in this telenovela that could outdrink other families under the table. Their violins would play to whine about one sister's injustice, or how xenophobia ruined a brother's attempt at a white-collar career. Yawn skeins were what she left behind with the zoetic puzzle of where she might have hidden her jewelry. Accumulated hiding places were ways to anchor her bravery through war, occupation, and poverty as she silently sang her survival song. Conducting her power even from beyond, her heirs cleaned her home, dug through every jacket, looking for secret pockets, ever reminded how this frail elder knew how to perform her finale.
Bravo. Wow.
Do you watch Bridgerton, Diana?
Some of it, yes, I have.
You know the gossip.
Uh-huh.
So delighted.
Jen, when you were a child, were you a social butterfly or were you shy? Or somewhere in between?
I was certainly a shy little introvert bookworm. So
Yes.
this gossip queen is such not my personality. So fictional characters are lots of fun to play with when you're processing or working with perhaps feelings that are not so pleasant.
How did you become involved? That may not be the right word, but how did you become a performance artist?
So all of us, I think, are born into a certain kind of family dynamic. And if you look at the Muppets or the characters on Sesame Street or any character ensemble in a sitcom, they represent different facets of our humanness, right? That you could be a clown, the class clown, but I was never allowed to be the class clown because I was supposed to be the straight A student. I would love to be the class clown. How fun is that, right? I was never the drama queen. There was too much drama growing up. I just wanted peace. So the garden, watering the garden, going to the park was my escape. But could you imagine how much fun my grandma had pulling the puppet strings of her children and creating drama? So yes, I've actually studied puppetry because I refuse to pull puppet strings on humans. That's manipulation. That's not kindness in my book. But I will manipulate puppets and I will manipulate my words to provide entertainment. So I think all of us could benefit from playing around with archetypes. In fact, there's a fantastic book by Carolyn Miss, MISS, and it's called Sacred Archetypes, Sacred Contracts. And she goes through these archetypes, which have been around since, at least documented, since ancient Greek times and documented in other ancient civilizations. So yes, there's archetypes of the gossip queen, the busybody, the class clown, the neurotic, the innocent who's, oblivious and gullible to everything. If you look at Shakespeare, he takes all of the ancient Greek archetypes and puts it in comedies and dramas. So reflecting that we are not alone, that throughout time and all shapes and sizes of families, we have different kinds of people, and that's a potential inside of us. And I think it's very healing. I took improvisational theater so that I could learn to access different parts of me. I don't aim to be an actor. I took improv to help with my own healing.
Earlier, when you were talking about the water element and Poseidon, I was thinking how Pegasus, the symbol of poetry, offspring from the blood of the severed head of rape victim Medusa, that wherever Pegasus would strike his hoof, a healing fountain would emerge.
Yes, and the wood element is what this grandma poem comes from, that I organized it in such. And I didn't want to write a sad eulogy, and I didn't want to resent her for creating drama. So if you think about family, the wood element represents family, represents harvesting. It's not just literal tree, it's like the farmland, the wealth that you can build, and it could represent chosen family. And as a queer person, chosen family is so important because many of us do not have biological family that we can lean on or who understand us well. So a lot of people, whether you're queer or not, we find friends who are loving and understanding of us that are sometimes more supportive than biological family.
How can our listeners learn more about you? Your books, your workshops?
Yeah, if you look on social media, my handle is Jen, Jenc Voice, only one letter C, Jenc Voice. And if you're not on social media, you can go on my website and click on the front page. There's always a link of upcoming events, and that's just a link tree that has all the classes and event registrations. So upcoming this Saturday, I'm teaching how to write a memorable artist statement. So for those of us who are writing grants or applications for projects, everybody needs to have an artist statement. That's online for those of you who are not in LA, Los Angeles, online and in person. So wonderful group hosting it is offering that class taught by me. And there's other things like the Hammer Museum has asked me to teach a class for their youth program. So I'm a guest teacher, a teaching artist with various programs, and I can barely remember what I'm doing. So click on
You are one busy person.
Click on the link on my
Yep.
website, jencvoice.com, or on the profile of my social media, and you'll find the various things I'm doing. And I'll slow down for the summer because I need to write and work on publishing more things. And I'm always here available for private individual consultations. I've been a ghostwriter. I have been a strategist to help other people launch their creative careers, their book launches. So I'm available as a resource. If you want to work with me, you can always email me, jencvoice@gmail.com.
I'm thinking of what you said earlier about your mom who had mental health struggles, right? And what some people taking up all the air in the room. If there perhaps were a child now, and there are many who are in the midst of a family where there's mental health issues and challenges, and the parents have problems, right? And there you are, you emerged into this family, right? What do you have any, from your own experiences, any suggestions to offer to a child who's in the midst of a family that's struggling this way, and their own needs might not be being recognized because of what's happening all around them? And so often these are secrets, so it may not be that other people understand what's going on.
Yeah, it was very hard to have friends as a child because I needed to confide in somebody, but the things going on in my family were too mature for peers my age. So that ended up being a dangerous thing because people would run away from me sharing that. So my recommendation is please confide in an adult, like a teacher or a piano teacher, or even a camp counselor, a swim coach, someone who has the capacity, because I felt harmed again when people could not listen and could not support me. So find a supportive person. It could even be, I don't know, your soccer coach. And if someone doesn't understand or listen to you at first, it's okay. It's not you. It's not personal. They just don't have the ability or skill set. So you try again, because being alone and feeling alone is terrible. You definitely need to feel understood and supported. And find a hobby if you don't have that friendly, supportive adult. Find a hobby like art. I really love art therapy, music therapy. Draw out your feelings, put it on crayon. Who cares if it's a good painting or not? Make Play-Doh things, color into no lines. Knit, weave, write poetry, read poetry, talk to a librarian. Librarians are so awesome. They really know a lot of resources. You don't want to share your feelings with the librarian, you can ask them to help you find a book about something similar. I can tell you that Beverly Clearly was a fantastic author for me to write. Judy Blume was a fantastic author for me to read from. As a child, I needed the Beverly Clearlys and the Judy Blumes because they talked about difficult family dynamics and that I was not wrong for feeling how everything was not rosy. So yeah, find solace in books and movies. I hope you survive, and I promise that whatever troubles you get through, you'll come out stronger for it. I love the Kelly Clarkson song. I hate the term, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I hate it because in the middle of it, you feel like you're being killed. But to be stronger, to be brave when you don't feel like it. Gosh, Diana, you're bringing out my feelings today.
Warm embrace to you, Jen. Thank you so very much for being with us.
Yeah, and I see this banner under our video podcast. There are resources online that you can call and talk to a stranger who has been trained. Even if you're not suicidal, like it was helpful for me to call a suicide hotline when my roommate was suicidal and I had to figure out what was my next step to visit him in the hospital. So even if you're not suicidal, but you're coping with people who have mental health issues, you can call those 1-800 lines with volunteers who truly have been trained and have the capacity to listen to you.
In Oregon, we have our own dedicated 988 website page too. And I know that there's a effort for people to recognize that the 988 number is also, yes, it's for suicide and suicide prevention and that type of crisis, but they're also open to talking about other type crises as well, so that it doesn't lead up to that eventual, suicidality. So everyone be aware of that. 988 can be your friend, just like poems and books can be your friends too.
Did you have favorite books, Diana, for children or teens growing up in challenging household that you want to recommend?
I need to give more thought to that than just off the top of my head, but I know for myself personally that I was a pretty shy and lonely child too. And that poets became my friends, poems became my friends, because I felt that all of emotion and all of life was in poetry. And it was also not judgmental. It was very accepting.
Yeah. Kino, do you want to share what music you might listen to when you need some support?
Eminem.
I know.
That was a no-brainer for me my entire life growing up. If ever I felt depressed or I felt sad or I needed to be motivated, Eminem always had one track that would just lift me up like that. To date, I'm still a fan.
Yeah. I also recommend...
Yeah, but everyone is different. Everybody has their special artists, their special genre, that gets them going. You just need to find what works for you.
Yeah, I have some friends who love punk and metal because it helps channel their anger and frustration, but also can be super beautiful. So, I listen to like Singing Bowls, more of the Buddhist type new age tracks to help calm my nervous system. I also recommend reading Buddhist texts, like from the Vietnamese monk who recently passed. Deer Park Monastery was one of his spots, Thich Nhat Hanh, and the Dalai Lama. I just love how these Buddhists say that we can choose happiness, and that gives agency to many of us who feel robbed of agency, that we can choose to be happy. And I have learned some things are not my problem, because as a kid trying to cope with a very drama-full household, I have to just say that's not my problem. They will sort it out. And I feel like that's a lifelong learning challenge. We want people to get along. We want everything to be okay, but then we can burn out ourselves if we take it on as our problem.
Earlier, you spoke of how writing can be so much editing, right? And in a way, life is like that too.
Great callback, Diana. I love that.
And think, even though this is maybe put it in quotation marks, a simple book, I really liked the children's book, The Little Engine That Could.
Oh, yeah.
Then there was another one, I guess the Golden Books had a big impact in my life. There was one about the little tugboat, who ended up, how did this happen? It was in the bathtub, and I don't know, did it go down the drain into the ocean? I don't know. Somehow it got into the ocean, but it's having adventures. But the man and the little boy, they ended up finding the little tugboat at the end. So there can be so many teaching lessons. And I wanted to mention that apropos of the little engine that could, I'm reading a book about anxiety.
Yeah.
And in one of the chapters, it mentioned the little engine that could in terms of the thinking that are self-taught. And it didn't say, I think I can't, I think I can't, versus I think I can, I think I can. And in my reading those lines, I was thinking, oh, wow, the illustration would have been very different with I think I can't, I think I can't. The little train would have gone to the edge of a cliff and fallen off. So I'm thinking, too, that the thoughts we have in our head that we may not even be aware of, right? That those are words that we're implanting, that in writing poetry, it's a way to see the way that we're thinking.
And I encourage people to look at the 5 elements as a vehicle to help you shift your perspective or write from that character point of view, whether it's a guardian, spirit guide, or a folklore or some kind of support, a stronger character. When you feel weak, it's okay to feel weak. And perhaps you can shift yourself out of the weak place by taking on the costume, the armor, the perspective of a stronger support.
Thank you, Jen. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Keena.
Bye.
Bye.